This is the burning issue on the happy world of 5FM radio, bringing you hot, smoldering topics on a weekly basis. Your participation is important.
Good morning and welcome to the happy world of 5FM radio, burning issue Thursday edition. We are grateful that you found time to tune in and be a part of this particular program. And we are grateful also to our partner radio stations who are carrying this program live on their platforms, and namely these are Tuta FM radio in Mansa on 90.7 FM. Thank you very much. And also live on Muchinga radio in Chinsali, covering Muchinga province on 88.1, and also live on the Copper Belt on iWave FM radio based in Chingola, covering the rest of Copper Belt on 90.1 FM. Also live in Central Province, in Kabwe to be particular, on Spice FM radio, that is on 91.1. And also here in Lusaka, we are live on 89.9 on 5FM radio. Southern Province is also catered for. We are live on Wave FM radio on 98.7, based in Mazabuka, but indeed covering the rest of Southern Province. Welcome to the main issue. Also live on our Facebook page. Follow our conversation on our Facebook page and leave us a comment or indeed a question. And the Facebook page is 5FM Radio Zambia. I'm your host, Zachariah Banda. Our guest today, this morning, we are privileged to host Mr. Nicolas Phiri, who is the Permanent Secretary for Technical Services at the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development. PS, welcome to the program. Good to have you. And how are you?
Thank you very much, Zach. It's always a privilege to be here, and Happy New Year to you.
Indeed. Happy New Year. It's the first time we are talking.
Yeah. And Happy New Year to all your esteemed listeners. And I must take this opportunity, Zach, to really thank the people of Zambia for the feedback they have continuously and relentlessly given to the ministry, to the government, but in particular, my ministry,
right?
Because, you know, my ministry is a people-centric ministry.
Right.
It is a conduit of delivering development to the people. We are the ones that are in touch with the last person in the smallest unit of this country. And so the feedback from the citizenry has been extremely important in the ministry to shape government policy, our approach, our design of programs. And as we go into the program, I will be able to speak to some of the things that have helped us to shape the direction of the ministry in terms of service delivery, arising from the feedback that we've been getting from the citizens. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to say thank you very much to all the citizens for the harsh criticism sometimes, for the constructive criticism, for all the feedback. It has helped your ministry to deliver to expectations. Of course, there's a lot of room for improvement, but to learn and improve by the day. So thank you very much for that feedback, and thank you for hosting us, Zach.
Great. More feedback will be coming because later in the course of the program, and I will deliberately open the phone lines quite early today, because we would like to get as much feedback from our listeners as possible. Now, our talking points today that we are touching on is through your ministry, how government is intending to eradicate cholera, right? We will also talk about CDF. The reported low utilization is key, and we want to find out how government is working around that to improve utilization of the CDF. And we'll also touch on how CDF can be a solution to drought-prone areas to mitigate droughts that have been caused by climate change. So, PS, let's get into it. I mean, on top of things, first of all, I do understand that your ministry was very busy during this cholera period when the pandemic was at its highest. And the fact that your ministry works closely with Ministry of Health. From your ministry point of view, Is cholera eradication on top of your agenda as a ministry?
Thank you very much, Zach, for that question. Let me start by stating, without missing my words,
Right.
what I have before stated publicly, that it is extremely embarrassing for us as a country. And I want to say this really without any political undertones.
Right.
It is extremely embarrassing for us as a country to be battling with one agenda item year in, year out. Zach, cholera is not a new phenomenon in this country. Everyone who is listening to us right now will agree that cholera has straddled across all political administrations. The question is why? And let's discuss this issue without putting politics. Let's just look at it as a public disease. Why should we have cholera year in, year out as if it were a traditional ceremony? I'm saying why because the drivers of cholera, Zach, are well known. Well known, well documented by the World Health Organization, by several other international institutions, by our own public health institutions in the country, including the private sector. The drivers of cholera, Zach, among others, are poor water and sanitation conditions, are poor infrastructure provision. They are behavioral issues where people decide to, for example, trade where they're not supposed to trade from, sell food where they're not supposed to sell food from, discharge solid waste and other waste products where they're not supposed to discharge from. So it has to do with behavioral. It has to do with poor spatial planning. This is a reason why in some, even within the country, in some residential areas, you have cholera, in others you don't have. Why? Because the factors I've mentioned are at different levels in the different locations. So the point I'm trying to make, Zach, is that this issue of cholera is an issue that has been there year in, year out. The question is why? Why should we allow this? Unfortunately, it is one that claims lives, Zach. Ngati yezechabe matende yakuti yakusiyako chibanga, a scar. You say, okay, it's okay. But this is a disease that takes our beloved ones.
In a more undignified manner.
In a more undignified manner, in an unpredictable manner, in a massive manner. Why have we allowed this to be as it is? Your answer, your guess to why is as good as mine. So, coming back to your question, whether this government is putting this agenda on top, and in particular, if my ministry, because by the way, Zach, I want to say here that the Ministry of Health is just caught up in the inefficiencies of other sectors. Because if you talk about spatial planning, that is my responsibility as Minister of Local Government, PS Technical Services. That's my responsibility to ensure that there is a proper spatial planning. If you talk about water and sanitation, there's a ministry dedicated to that. And I'm not afraid to say and shy to say that the Ministry of Health is caught up to deal with the effects of inefficiencies that arise from elsewhere. Now, the president, His Excellency President Hakainde Hichilema, has said to us that he doesn't want a repeat and resurgence of cholera in this country ever. And for us, as operatives, that's a directive. Once it comes from the presidency, it means that it is priority number one. So yes, the eradication, complete eradication, absolute eradication of cholera in this country is top of the agenda of this administration because it is embarrassing. By the way, cholera is associated with dirty. So it is embarrassing for us as a country to be having cholera year in, year out. Talk about COVID. Yes, we understand it was a global pandemic,
Right.
but really cholera? No. So yes, that is top of the agenda of this administration to ensure that this cholera issue is eradicated. And we are going to do everything in our power. Of course, working with all the stakeholders, including yourself, Zach,
Right.
as a media,
Right.
including the politicians, because that's part of the problem. Politicization of issues that are even of common interest. But we want to work with everyone. And I think in the program, maybe we can go a little bit in detail on how we want to tackle this. But yes, it is top of the agenda, and we'll make sure we'll do everything within our power as a ministry, as a government, with the support of the president and everybody else to ensure that we say complete goodbye to the annual occurrence of cholera.
Indeed. And when you say that eradication of cholera is on top of the agenda, all this is preceded by a plan. How then do you intend to do it?
Okay. So the first thing, Zach, we have to understand is we have to define the problem.
Right.
Of course, the problem is cholera, but the issue is what brings about cholera.
Right.
And some of the things I talked already, I spoke to them already. Now, let me just dwell a little bit on Lusaka as an epicenter of cholera, because most of the times this cholera starts from Lusaka. Of
Indeed.
course, there are incidences where we have had isolated cases reported in some other places, but the major exporter, and I'm using this word loosely, the major exporter of cholera to the other provinces is Lusaka. It's the epicenter. Now, within Lusaka, you have to narrow down again to which areas are hotspots. When you do that, then you begin to isolate areas like, for example, George. You begin to isolate areas like, for example, Kanyama, Chibolia, Mrs. McKenvilla, all that area.
Right.
Then you ask yourself, okay, why are these areas hotspots? You begin to see a trend, namely, number one, that there is unplanned settlement. By unplanned settlement, I mean the way the structures, the buildings have been erected there are in such a way that they may not allow or they do not factor in the provision of other supporting infrastructure, such as drainages. Why drainages? To allow for the easy flow of water. They do not allow for the provision of piped water and sewer systems. But in the worst case scenario, Zach, they are built on the sort of ground or soil that is highly susceptible to disease infestation because of the topographical nature, the way the soil formation and other formations of the rocks underground are structured. Let's dwell on Kanyama in particular. The recommended amount of water, Zach, that every person must use by according to WHO is about 20 liters in a day. When you go to Kanyama, for example, and these other areas I've mentioned, the average access and usage of water per person is below 10 liters a day. If you talk about the shallow wells, more than 50% of the water that was tested in those areas is contaminated. Contaminated by what? Contaminated by human waste, fecal matters. And these are not new facts, Jack. These facts have been known for years. And we had allowed the situation to go on like that. So what is the plan of the ministry? Your question was top of the plan. So
Right.
what we are doing as a ministry is to ensure that, first of all, we mobilize the political will, because that is the biggest issue. Every time, for example, we say, okay, can we engage with the citizens that maybe we find a solution to this? The first thing that comes there is politics. Because, by the way, Kanyama constituency itself has more than 500,000 people. It has about 500 and something thousand people staying in there. So politically, obviously, that's a political dividend. So if you are going to make a decision focusing solely on politics, you may not make the decision. So what is the plan of the ministry? The plan of the ministry, the first thing we have done is that we have constituted an inter-ministerial team, the Council of Ministries. This comprises, of course, the Ministry of Information. Why Ministry of Information? For publicity, for engagement with the communities, because we need to move with this program together, the communities.
Right.
We also have the Ministry of Water and Sanitation Development in that committee. Why? Because remember, we said that part of the problem here is poor water and sanitation, where people are accessing, an individual is accessing less than 10 liters of water per day. We are talking about lack of well-developed sewer systems there. So the Ministry of Water and Sanitation Development is very, very key. Then, of course, we've got the Ministry of Local Government. Why the Ministry of Local Government? Because this is the ministry which is charged with the responsibility of spatial and physical planning. We need to know, Zach, where are we going to build a shopping mall? Where are we going to build where can we build a toilet? Where can we build what infrastructure? That information should be well tabulated even before any development happens. By the way, there's a law, Zach, known as the Regional and Urban Planning Act of 2015. This act makes it mandatory that there should be an area development plan, there should be an integrated development plan. And part of the things that this plan does is to define your geographical location and apportion it according to its endowment and according to how things can speak to each other. Otherwise, you end up going to construct water points in a place which is prone to contamination, like what is happening in Kanyama. So the Ministry of Local Government is key in this interministerial to ensure that we have proper area plans for these areas. The other department or agency which is in there is the Office of the Vice President.
Right.
Why? Because the Office of the Vice President is in charge of resettlement. Part of the plan, Zach, may, please listen carefully, may include asking those that are willing to relocate to be able to relocate, and they should be provided with alternative, better land. And we cannot do that without the involvement of the Office of the Vice President. And I think it's a good idea for those that would be willing to relocate so that we can have space there where we can pass sewer lines, water lines, roads, drainages, because that's what's lacking in those areas. Then these can be accommodated on an alternative land, which is agricultural productive and which is much better than what is obtaining right now. So we have the Office of the Vice President. And of course, we also have a DMMU in there, which is also part of the Office of the Vice President.
Yeah.
And all these sectors working together, we have now developed what we call the urban upgrading program, phase 1, which program is going to look at how we can sustainably address the issues that I've just highlighted
Right.
in that particular area in Kanyama.
So my concern is you are saying that those willing to relocate, they must be relocated. Why should it be that they must be willing? Isn't it supposed to be the fact that by law, they are all supposed to move to pave way for that development?
Yeah. So, Zach, this matter is a very, very complex issue,
Right.
because it involves human life,
Right.
livelihoods, and also emotions.
Right.
And of course, there's politics. Now, in Kanyama, you also have areas where people were given title, for example.
Yes.
They have title. We have over 1,000 buildings there that are sitting on title. We have another 1,000 plus buildings that have offer letters.
Right.
And now, please don't ask me, why did you give them title when you knew they were sitting on a wrong place? Because I'll not be able to give you that answer.
Indeed. I know that.
Now, the issue is that you cannot, as a government, because the number one function of the state, the number one function of my ministry is to protect citizens. So we cannot take arbitrarily actions, even to affect those people that legally, and I'm using again this word very cautiously, legally acquired those titles, and those that legally acquired the offer letters. And that's why the community engagement to build consensus is very, very important. But I wish to report to you, Zach, that the people in Kanyama are actually willing, more than willing, to pave way for the upgrade of those areas. And let me not just say Kanyama, the people that are affected in this unplanned settlement, in the informal settlements, are more than willing, Zach. The people that actually speak the loudest against that idea are people that are not affected. Zach, okumvwa mala ndio zulako. That's what we say. Chironda, okumvwa kukalipa kwa chironda mwine. Those are the people that when cholera hits, they are directly affected by it. Their children, their relatives, their mothers, they get affected. So they understand government intentions. And I can tell you from where I'm sitting that what has been lacking probably is the incentives, because you need to incentivize. If you are going to move someone who is a landlord, by the way, 65% of the people in Kanyama are tenants, which means that most of these buildings have got owners behind who are deriving a livelihood from those buildings.
Right.
So if you are going to come as a government and say, we want to put a sewer line here, then you should also be saying to the owner of the facility that in compensation to this is an incentive which is there. And that is what has been lacking. So the people have been willing. What was lacking? Incentive.
To compensate them.
To compensate. Now I can confidently tell you, Zach, that we already have looked at the prospects of the possible areas of relocation. We are going to work now on the modalities of actually, we have already worked on the modalities of the infrastructure and the rough estimates in phase 1, how much it will cost us. We are now going to work, what is remaining now for us is to work out the compensation according to the law, how that will go. When we do the detailed local area plan, because the local area plan will mark out specifically the buildings that needs to be removed in order to provide what service. So once we do that, then we can evaluate them, cost them, then we'll come up with the figure of compensation. But we are going to go all the way to ensure that the people that will be affected are provided with alternative spaces, that will support their livelihoods even better than where they are. Because number one, we are looking at a productive land. Number two, we are looking at taking people away from the hazard of cholera and other public new disease that ultimately claim lives.
Interesting, PS. And I know that our listeners are following you keenly, and they are following what you're saying. And I know that once we open the phone lines, there will be more questions to come around that. So I'll leave that to the listeners in as far as feedback is concerned. Let's move to CDF and the reported low levels of utilization. What's causing the low levels of utilization of CDF?
Thank you very much, Zach. So,
or maybe let's start with a question that one of our partner radio stations decided that maybe it would be important to first of all understand components of CDF. So this one says, "Morning, Mr. Phiri. Kindly break down the component of CDF expenditure, with particular emphasis on the amount and percentage allocation to community empowerment, such as women, youth, etc. Also, do you think some constituencies have challenges accessing and using CDF compared to others?" And I think that's where the utilization
comes
is.
in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So, Zach, the CDF has the following components. We have bursaries for secondary schools and skills development. That's one component. Then we have community projects. And then we have empowerment of women, youth, and the community. So, please follow me very well.
Right.
So, the community projects constitute 60% of the CDF allocation.
Right.
60%. Bursaries for secondary schools and skills development is 20%. Then empowerments for youth and women and the community is another 20%.
Right.
Now, under these components, again, you have sub-components. For example, under empowerments for youth, women, and the community,
Right.
you have what we call CDF loans.
Right.
Okay, CDF loans. And then you also have what we call grants.
Right.
So for the CDF loans, of the 20%, again, is the 60%. And then of the grants is the 40% of the 20%.
Okay.
And then under community projects, you also have a 5% of the 60%, which is for disaster.
Okay.
Disaster response.
Yes.
And then, of course, you have a 5%, which is for administration purposes. So if you like, then all these components will be 100% of the 95%, because the 95%, because the 5% administration is 5% of the whole CDF.
Right.
So which means that these components now, I was breaking down the 40, the 20, 60, 20, that is a percentage of 95%.
Right.
I hope that is clear. So now, that's how it's structured. Now, let me talk a little bit about the loans and the grants.
Right.
The loans are meant to stimulate and encourage the spirit of enterprising. And they are administered by the banks and other financial institutions when they do an assessment of your business, how viable it is, and so on and so forth. And these are meant to be paid back. However, the interest rate for these loans is what we call a flat rate. What that means, Zach, is that if you get, and it's at 5%.
Right.
So what that means, Zach, is that if you get 100 kwacha for mathematical convenience, let's get 100 kwacha. 5% of 100 kwacha is 5 kwacha. It means that the cost of your loan is 5 kwacha. If that loan, for example, is for 1 year, it means that in that 1 year, you are only going to pay 5 kwacha as your interest rate. That is how simplified it is. The grants are given as seed money, and mostly all the time they are given to cooperatives, organized groups. So a group comes together, they identify a project, then they apply to the council, they are given that money, there's no refund that is expected of them. What is expected is that they are going to use that as seed money to start to improve their social, their economic and social well-being. So that is the structure of the CDF. Now, in terms of utilization, your question was, why is there huge variation for the utilization of CDF? There are several factors, Zach.
Yeah.
But the three most important factors in our view and in our assessment as a ministry have to do with the institutional capacity. It has to do with the processes, the procedures. Then it has to do with politics. 3. And I would explain each one of these.
Please.
Now, institutional capacity. The institutional capacity, Zach, entails that all the institutions that are involved in the CDF value chain should have the necessary competences and adequate human resource to be able to process the CDF projects on record time. For example, for community projects that involve buildings, there's a requirement in the procedure that the engineers must do what is known as a field appraisal. In field appraising, they are trying to look at the physical building that is being proposed to be constructed, and then they come up with the BOQs, the bill of quantities. They inform how this building, how much material it will need, and then the costings, engineers' estimates, and so on and so forth. Now, in some local authorities, the department, in fact, in all the local authorities, the Department of Engineering is poorly resourced in terms of human resource.
Right.
And that sometimes delays the rate at which these projects are approved. That's to do with institutional capacity. But also, remember that the increase of the CDF kind of shocked the system. Look, an increase from 1.6 million to over 20 million. Because even the 1.6 million, they had problems to do with this money. So now, to increase this to 20 million in one financial year, it brought a lot of shock to the system, starting with the World Development Committees. You remember in 2021, the first thing we did was to begin to put in place the WDCs, because the Local Government Act and the CDF Act of 2018 recognizes only the WDC as the only legitimate and legal structure where the CDF processes. Remember, CDF is part of the larger decentralization agenda. this is where the structure, the process is supposed to start from. But in 2021, when UPND formed government, the structures were not in place. So you form them that year and then expect them to perform that particular year. No capacity building whatsoever provided to them. That also was another institutional challenge that came about because of the this increase. So it contributed to the slow burn rate. Then I come to processes. The way it is now, let me say before now, the CDF application for Kasempa constituency would come all the way to the ministry in Lusaka for the PS to recommend to the minister for approval, and then the minister approves.
Right.
I think that was a lengthy process. Fortunately, we have decentralized that. Now it has gone to the province. But there are still some documents that have to come to the central government through the Attorney General's chambers, because as the law sits now, the Constitution,
Yes.
the Attorney General is still supposed to physically sign those documents, the contracts, in order for you to start the project. So that one, there's really very little we can do to decentralize that, because even when there are provincial offices, the document will still have to come to the Attorney General. So that is how the Constitution is sitting. So that's another impediment. And then, so I spoke to the institutional, then I was speaking to the process now. Then comes politics.
Yes.
There are some areas, Zach, where some political players will say, without me, the CDFC will not sit. Now, what is the CDFC? The CDFC, the Constituency Development Fund Committee, is a final committee which approves projects and sends to the council. The council is simply a secretariat.
Yes.
So it approves and sends to the council for the council to either disburse the funds or indeed to ask the banks to disburse the funds for in case of the loans. Now, there are some constituencies where political players will say, without me, no meeting happens. So how far goes, the CDFC is not sitting, obviously there will be no projects approved. So all these things put together, they did and do contribute to the low burn rate. But I must say that notwithstanding the challenges I've highlighted, there has been a significant improvement in the efficiency of the CDF. When we started in 2021, the rate of utilization, of course, there was no rate of utilization to even talk about, because first of all, there was no disbursement. So anyway, in 2022 to 2023, the baseline value was somewhere around 36% in terms of utilization. We pushed that by mid-2023 to about 46%, 42%. By the close of the year last year, we pushed that to about 56%. This year, our aim is to push the CDF burn rate to somewhere in the region of 80%. And this is the reason why, as I'm talking to you today, now as I'm talking to you, almost 90% of all the projects for 2024 have already been approved. They have already been approved. What is remaining now is implementation, procurement in some cases, and implementation. And for 2025, before the end of this quarter, we are starting to run adverts for CDF 2025 projects. This year, by the end of this quarter, we are beginning to advertise for CDF projects for next year, so that by December, we have everything. In fact, by the time the budget is ready, then we know by December, we have everything approved. Come January, we are just going into implementation. And for 2025, we have put our burn rate target at about 90%. So that is how we are going to progress. And with the amendment of the Act, which is expected, anytime within this quarter, we think that all these things put together, they're really going to help us to ensure that there's efficiency in the utilization of the CDF. The Office of the Secretary to the Treasury has also devolved its function up to the directors of finance in the respective local authorities. So you see all these efforts being put together in order to achieve efficiency in the utilization of the development fund that government is making available to the constituencies.
In your explanation, very well understood, and I can see that, you know, much as you're explaining, you're basically explaining your decentralization agenda being implemented.
Precisely.
Let's talk more about the decentralization, because I mean it's received quite a lot of criticism, and most politicians have called it something that will never work.
Yeah. Well, yes, Zach, you are right. I mean, when this government increased the allocation of the Constituency Development Fund,
Yeah.
part of the criticism was that local authorities had no capacity
Right.
to implement CDF. But from the statistics coming out now, you have seen there are some local authorities that have hit 70%, 80%, even 90% utilization. So there are always those that can say it cannot work. But there are always those of us that believe that nothing is impossible. It can work, and it will work. Now, I understand why people think that the decentralization will not work, because decentralization in this country is not a new agenda. Zach, sometimes I just want to be a citizen. Of course, I know I'm a civil servant.
Right.
Of course, I know I'm a political appointee. But sometimes I just want to be a citizen and just face things, because even us serving in government, Zach, we are serving at the pleasure of the people. But more importantly, our biggest motivation, Zach, is to serve the people so that we leave this country better than we found it. That's my motivation, at least. And I know that's the motivation of my president. Now, decentralization, Zach, in this country was more pronounced during campaigns only. And I want someone to challenge me that, PS, you are lying. During campaigns, people say, oh, mpamvu kubantu, power to the people, come and do this. But it's true, there has been no traction. It started with the UNIP regime. All the way up to today where we are, decentralization was more of a political rhetoric than practice. Now, without comparing and contrasting, I just want to state the facts of where we are now. Of course, CDF is part of the decentralization agenda.
Right.
So we have given money from the central government to the people. Decisions are starting from the ward. By the way, and just for information, Zach,
Yeah.
the WDC, the Ward Development Committee, is a composition and reflection of the zones of a particular ward. So a ward is divided into zones.
Yes.
And zones are made up of villages. So the village committees will choose people to the zone committee. The zone committee will choose representatives to go and sit at the ward. So when the ward sits, all the villages are represented there. When they identify projects, it's a reflection of what the village people there want. And we have said, here, make decisions, here's the money. That's one thing we have done. But apart from that, Zach, you may wish to know that we have gone further and acquired a facility from the World Bank to the tune of $210 million. $210 million. And we are calling it the Zambia Devolution Support Program to help the strengthening the institutional capacity of local authorities to be able to mobilize resource, to be more accountable to the people, and deliver the required services to the people. All that is in the effort, Zach, to run away from only making decentralization visible during political campaigns. But not only that, Zach, we also have gone ahead as a government to assign certain functions. 8 functions from 6 ministries have been assigned to local authorities. And my ministry is privileged to supervise the implementation of those functions. We are talking about community sports. From the Ministry of Youth and Sports, it has been taken to the local authorities. You are talking about national archives, or now district archives, I beg your pardon, which initially was with the Ministry of Internal Security. It has been devolved to us. You are talking about jetties and pontoons and ferries, which was under Ministry of Transport and Logistics. It's been brought to us. You are talking about vehicle licensing, again under Ministry of Transport and Logistics. It has been brought to us. You are talking about veterinary services. It has been brought to us. Ambulances and primary health care, it has been brought to us. So all this, Zach, is not just on paper. We have gone ahead to involve the budgeting and planning for these functions with the local authorities. So they are managing those budgets now on their own for those particular activities. So we have not just moved the functions, we have also moved the fiscus, the supporting fiscal framework to the local authorities to be able to implement this. So clearly, Zach, what you see is a demonstration of not only political will, but the will to make decentralization better. By making decentralization better, I mean it's the will to empower Zambians in the real sense to participate. Now, I'll tell you one of the biggest challenges we have. One of the biggest challenges we have is to also build capacities of communities, for communities to understand that these decisions and interventions are for them to own and run. Because much as central government can say, okay, you go and make your own decisions, if communities are not participating, then it becomes a challenge. And this is where now we are calling on non-governmental organizations, non-state actors, the media, to begin to partner with us to make popular the message of decentralization in order for communities to take advantage of the incentives we have given through the Zambia Devolution Support Program, through the CDF, through the other decentralization agenda through devolution, so that we can begin to hold us to account, hold local authorities to account, take interest in the budget of a local authority. A budget of a local authority is not a classified document, for God's sake. Walk there and ask, what is the budget? How many streetlights are going to put this year? How many water and sanitation points are you going to put? Let's see your budget. Let's participate in this. And if the local authorities are not cooperating, that's why the ministry is here as a supervisory body to ensure that we are accountable to the people, because decentralization is not for the government. It is for the people to begin to hold their government to account.
But also, I do understand that CDF is a flagship of the UPND government, right? And
exactly.
Because it is the UPND government attached to this CDF, the increased CDF, politics, like you said, definitely will be at play in some parts. And you have identified that political interference has contributed to the low levels in as far as the utilization of CDF is concerned. What have you done as government to make sure that politicians do not politicize this development?
Well, so there are several things done and yet to do. Right. One of them has been to just constantly engage with political players, because again, we must accept that the politicians, especially the members of parliament and the councillors, are very much part and parcel of government by and large, and the CDF in particular. So even we as government cannot move that agenda without the cooperation and participation. Let me rephrase. Even we as government cannot move the CDF agenda effectively without the participation and cooperation of the members of parliament and the councillors, irrespective of their political affiliation. So one of the things that we have done, my minister has been constantly engaging with his fellow MPs in order for us to pull in the same direction, to understand that we are doing this for the people. And I think to some extent that has worked. But in instances where it's not going to work, or where we might have challenges even after engagement, the bottom line, Zach, is that you cannot hold the people at ransom. And by the people, I mean government, because government is working on behalf of the people. So you cannot hold the people at ransom. The people will always prevail. So I think really it may be an exercise in futility to try and hold development at ransom, because no one person really can hold development at ransom. The people always prevail. So I think that it is safer and best for all of us to work together. And I must tell you, Zach, that we have a very good relationship in some places with political players. And Kanchibia, for example, is one of those outstanding examples where the leadership of the council at the council chairperson level is under a political leadership which may not necessarily be in the ruling party. The member of parliament is coming from an outfit that may not be part of the UPND, but the level of cooperation is solely premised on the common vision that we share to provide services to the people. So there now we are putting up a modern center in Kanchibia for the first time in the history of that particular district, which was created in 2013. We are putting up a radio station. We are putting up a police post. We've brought together with the council there. We've bought the road equipment, and we are doing bridges and so many other beautiful things. And this is how it ought to be, that we work together for the betterment of the people. When the MP wins, government wins. Ultimately, our people win, and we are going to leave these public offices very satisfied without looking over our shoulders.
Mr. Nicolas Phiri, the Permanent Secretary for Technical Services in the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development, is our guest this morning on the Thursday edition of The Burning Issue. We are also live on our partner radio stations. We are FM in Mansa, Muchinga Radio in Muchinga Province, in Chinsali to be precise, and Copper Belt is alive to this particular program. We are live on iWave in Chingola, covering Copper Belt, live on Spice FM in Kabwe, covering Central Province, here in Lusaka, 5 FM on 89.9, and of course we are live on Wave FM in Mazabuka, covering Southern Province. I will be taking your calls now on 0955-221515. And of course, your SMSs and WhatsApp messages are welcome to 0761-912493. Once again, the number for your messages, WhatsApp as well as SMSs, it's 0761-912493. And for your phone calls, call us on 0955-221515. Let's take the first call. I will ask that you wear your headsets, PS. Good morning.
Good morning, Zach.
How are you today?
I'm very fine, thank you.
Your name, and where are you calling us from?
My name is Mr. Chikatura. Good morning, Comrade Phiri, the PS.
Good morning, Comrade. Long time. How are you?
A long time indeed.
Yeah.
We first of all, I would like to appreciate you for the well articulated the program.
Great.
And the information that you've provided. That is very, very clear.
Thank you.
Yes, my concern is on the equalization fund in terms of council, local authorities, and the city council projects. Like the issue of CDF, there are projects that can be by the CDF, and I understand there should be some projects that should be done under equalization fund. I'll give you a practical example of my constituency, Solwezi West, Kalumbira district. There is a project that has been pending since 2011 over a certain bridge. When I ask there, they say, no, this project should be under equalization fund. I would like to find out how often is equalization fund disbursed to these local authorities. Thank you very much. My comrade, I would like to hear you anyway. I will talk later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chikatula, for that. And you too can call on 0955-221515. Good morning.
Good morning, Zaki.
Good morning, Dr. Proud. How are you today?
Nagaza was at the picture.
Dr. Professor, good morning. How are you? Professor.
I exactly pass the phone in that because your system we have taken UPS, including Mambo have owned on our garden combo is a lot of tax local government. Many but when you go quietly, over. For example, right now I'm in Katumamole. The whole Katumamole, no one is collecting garbage. You go to Great East Road. Kabini Ganashan next year container, no one is collecting. The tractor which used to collect the garbage garden enough, it was about 2016. Now you should make him a budget to put my tractor Mugurena and Nicolas Phiri. Right now, we have a constitution in Zaki, where is around the degree to work. But right now, the all people who got a degree by Nicolas Phiri, they have failed the office to correct the garbage, to mend a photo, including when you go to Revi Manawasa, Pajapa Junction, you get photo where you put a last year. But that is the major hospital, Great East Road. So this is my concern, the Nicolas Phiri. Including vendors, if the vendor are controlling you, Baba, you can involve our LPG. UPN is got a large population, you can help through money power to flush out those people who are defined government room. With the very few things, Nicolas, address the garbage which is taking over the whole Rusak. Including when you go to graveyard in Palestine, you can trace your relative, but you can go to graveyard Yamuno or you can't trace your relative. We need that to make a cement here with the range JP what is 100 years. Pagani going to go but Panga bin. You put him on a stadium patch. Thank you very much,
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Proud, for that. I'll take another one on 0955-221515. That's the number you're calling us on. Indeed, call us on 0761, or rather send us your messages. Don't call us. Send us your messages, that is SMSs and WhatsApp messages on 0761 912493. For your phone calls, please call us on 0955 221515. P.S. It's important that maybe we take one more call and then you respond. Good morning.
Hello.
Hello. Good morning.
Bazaki.
Mkwai.
Mwana mukashani.
Buta bukafe buno katshwena mkwai.
Inena ara mukafe buno neri wirira nda mkwai.
Twatotela. Atibani mkwai muleto atibani.
Mkwai mabukashani nimwe wananisha.
Nabukafe buno neri wirira nda ndetumira pamusumba wachingora panoni nebo don't busy.
Don't busy.
Mkwai boss.
But don't busy twatotela mkwai.
Atotela sana wakuna itali mwarondero la kusaka busungu sana. Zovu bombere ya CDF efo ifuiro kubomba ndefo kumikoseresha ngozi ubuteko bwadishita amakurusa aya kupita ma project are pangwa kupitira muri CDF ama project tabari yache kinga buno kana be sansha mifise so ishi nyoto kasha CDF ishisha kuchekina ko ama project mo turetera yarefo ikabambe ko kura checking ngachako atabakura checking amakura sasanga kidira baresa mu kita commissioner ayama project bafiro kita commissioner kumwando wako basasanga kipali chintu chimwe chiruvene mwasasanga chintu tabakurire buno badini shindara masha CDF shaireko shari fura sana mwamona ishiri tara masha CDF shari fura sana nashifika kuri fetch price shanyuko so shari ngire shaya kufyo tufire kuringira ko kugira munsi yakuri nomba nashireta fi muno buyantanishu ukutupangira ko ma project ya refoeka nomanga tabakura chekinga ero tule siro kurayisula kumwanda wako bachitabakulire buno ba contract abo tulepera abo twalabure mani besa nyaba be nabalingiri okuchekinga ayi na project pantu bali bapera kubuteko inyoto besha kurapita mu kechi babete kitatukwete inyoto besha kurapita mu kuchekinga ama project so inekina temusha sana sana mwakosedesha bonse fi ama provinces na ma district mu association nyotoka ngokura chekinga ama project yambe okuraenda bwino katulefwa ifu cyako bakindara amashibe kwa kina tarimo shire bombera rutu ukubombera rutu nde pilibura ba PS nyinshi cyako bati ishinda rama shire isa kubantu ero abantu tabareshi kumona shire pitira mu kuma project abantu ebare yafi abanono stage turiye ukupitira ama project are pangwa ngabatu pangira ka project aka musebo ifo nyishitu kuretwa mfwa bwino ngabatu pangira project ukupangira bridge muri CDA kufutfure twatemo nombe fifyo sefi ntimureta sangachi abakwe bachi bachecking ama project tabaremoneka so mukoseresha abantu bando kokura checking ama project are pangwa pakwe bachi CDF iponkamishwe pokumoneka ati irebomba echo abantu bayiringiri ne barera nda CDF tairebomba nicho kairi ama project yabo are panga tare moneka kubantu bare afisa mwamona so bafire bare isa pawere no kuranda chika project yapa bantu ari panga kutya muri CDF temurambi nango abantu baranda tiyo muri panga CDF mwazika pone chikuru wa CDF kairi indara mashire pangwa na CDF nomba ni pinga kani no kubika kupachikuru wa CDF bantu chipangire na CDF so tufire tu akite chikuru cha pangwa na CDF kwazika pati CDF so bapf konkanyo nipo kusa ku radio station no kwishibisha abantu pari CDF efo ifiro kubomba efo tufiro kurashya mu benefit na totera ngombe we
patotera Don Biz. Let's respond to those three.
Thank you very much for the calls from Comrade Enoch Chikatula, Dr. Proud, and Don Busy. But let me start with Don Busy because Don Busy is touching on a subject that is very close to the ministry and also one that we are expeditiously working on. So Don Busy basically is talking about the monitoring of CDF projects.
Right.
He's also talking about the branding of CDF projects. He was saying, why Kuti Mawika, something particular to show that this has been sponsored by CDF. And of course, the past few days we've seen, social media circulations of some CDF writings on certain infrastructure and vehicles being removed or allegedly removed, and so on and so forth. So, Don, I want to take advantage of your question to let you know and our listeners know that we actually have concluded working on the branding of all the CDF projects that have been done, at least under the expanded CDF project.
Right.
And we are going to launch the CDF brand, I think by the end of March or before the end of March, maybe the third week of March. We are launching the branding of all the projects, and all the projects are going, and all the projects and equipment that has been bought using the CDF money will be branded. And we are very sure that will increase visibility, and the communities will begin to see the impact of the CDF projects. Zach, I want to tell you that when you go to some areas, like I spent 30 days in Wapula, we are almost going to a point, Zach, where everywhere you turn and throw a stone, the chances are that you are going to land on a CDF project. There are communities that have really benefited exceptionally well in terms of the CDF. And I think part of the issues we really have to strongly work on is the communication of the CDF brand. So branding is one of the things we're going to do, but we'll also be launching a CDF communication strategy at national level, which strategy then will be adopted and adapted at the local area level to just enhance the CDF communication. CDF monitoring, yes, we have areas of concern around the CDF monitoring, and we are also working on mechanisms. One of the mechanisms we have worked on is the development of the CDF dashboard. It is still refined, and I can talk about it now because it's in the final stages.
Right.
And this dashboard will allow us to be able to monitor CDF projects at a glance, at a click of a button. But there are also other things we are doing to ensure that the quality, there's improvement in the quality. So we are constituting the multidisciplinary team at the provincial and district level to ensure that they frequently visit project sites and just ensure that the quality of the work is acceptable and matches the government standards. So thank you very much, Don Busy, for your contribution. Those are the issues that we are working on. Comrade is talking about the equalization fund, how often it's dispersed. So the equalization fund is dispersed every quarter. And he also says what's the difference between the equalization and the CDF. So, comrade, if you notice that the equalization fund was structured in 2080 system, whereby 20% was dedicated to infrastructure development and 80% was to support the administrative part of the council.
Yeah.
This is how the structure was up until this year, or until December 2023.
Right.
Now, the 20% infrastructure development was the same as the infrastructure we are doing in CDF under community development. So this was basically a duplication. So what we have done, comrade, now is that the equalization fund is dedicated to supporting the overhead costs of local authorities. So there's no component there, starting 2024 going forward, there's no component there that goes to infrastructure. The infrastructure development remains under CDF. I'm just concerned, comrade, that you are saying a project, a bridge, a crossing point which started some years back is still not complete because it was under equalization fund. I think that's a misplacement and misinterpretation of government policy, because the policy directive that we have provided to local authorities is that the completion of infrastructure that remained uncompleted should be prioritized. So before you go to new infrastructure, let's finish first what we started, because what we started, comrade, represents government money not being put to good use. You put in, let's say, for example, a bridge costs 1.5 million. You put in 500,000. Then you fail to complete it. It means that 500,000, you have not derived the value for money. So our directive to the local authority, the policy directive, was that when you are budgeting for projects, identify and prioritize those that stalled historically because of lack of funds. And I want to take this platform again to encourage my colleagues, the principal officers, to please prioritize all the projects that had stalled within your jurisdictions using the budgets that you've been provided for, so that we don't leave any infrastructure unattended to. Before we take on new ones, let's complete the ones that we started. Proud, I can't agree more with you. I can't agree more with you. There's really a lot we need to do about solid waste management. This issue we are failing. This issue we can do better. And this issue is part and parcel of getting rid of cholera from this country. One of the biggest issues about indiscriminate disposal, yes, there's a part where the collection efficiency has been bad in terms of the number of the amount of garbage we generate vis-a-vis what we collect. We are very cognizant of that we collect less than 50% of the garbage that we generate per day. We have put measures in order to address that issue. And one of the measures you may wish to know is that we have established what we are calling the Lusaka Solid Waste Management Integrated Company. This is a company which is co-owned by the Ministry of Finance, ourselves, through the Lusaka City Council. The idea is that the solid waste management should be isolated from the Lusaka City Council so that it is given to a dedicated company to run with this. So that is part of the idea to address the issues of solid waste management. But in addition to that, the ministry has also developed what is known as the Keep Zambia Clean Green Health Master Plan. There's never been a plan in terms of how we have collective efforts in addressing the issues of solid waste management. There's been a lot of fragmentation in this sector. So what this plan is seeking to do is to have a coordinated and regulated mechanism for stakeholders to participate in this. In addition to that, we have also developed the communication strategy for solid waste management, because one of the things we have to deal with, unfortunately, is the behavioral change. Because even all these mechanisms that we are putting in place in terms of solid waste management, that still change our behaviors, it could be very, very difficult. One of the things, for example, to give you a typical example, is that we are supposed to segregate waste at source. Meaning that at the point you are generating waste, Zach, you should be able to say, okay, in plastic, yakuti na utaifaka muchalo, mumusiri, sizakaola, you put it separately. This one is the bottle and whatever which can be recycled, you put it separately. This material, imaola tikaifaka, like vikamba va mango, va milisi, you put them separately. Now, that can only happen at source where you generate this waste. And what is the source of waste generation? It is at household level. So that speaks to the issue of behavioral change. That's one. Two, Zach, I'm sure you have seen people, muntu ayenza Mercedes-Benz for crying out loud. Mukairo Road, Mercedes-Benz of all the vehicles. Then they open the vehicle, window ya motoka, vatenga chi plastic na vikamba va shava full, vataya pa road.
Siya Benz, yeah.
Andi, kulibe mwananzela kumtima, I mean, how do you feel to do such a thing? So it speaks to issues of behavioral change. Mwamanga drainage spend so much money. Somebody and opomapo afapo kantemba wapeka hapo vitumbua. You go and remove it and know they are depriving people of livelihood. Behavioral change. So one of the things we must invest in is communication, strategic communication for behavioral change. And this is one of the things that the ministry last year spent time on doing. And also all these documents will be launched and popularized. And we are calling on stakeholders to anchor into these documents, make them popular, because there's nothing Zach we can do on our own. Brilliant. If people cannot participate, it's an exercise in futility. So everything we are doing, we are calling upon our citizens, cooperating partners, media houses, non-state actors, political parties. Let's come together towards a common cause.
P.S. Let me quickly give you a few messages. I've got one from our partner radio station, Tuta FM. Mansa District has a scenario where some areas have overlapping powers of the local government and traditional leadership. There are village head persons within the municipality. This has been creating conflict for some locals. Are you aware of this situation, and how do you guide this matter? How do you guide this matter can be handled, right? So let me again give you other messages. I've got one from Choma, says that's a nice topic. It is helping the entire nation. Keep it up. The government Republic of Zambia, UPND, Vakamitasha Ngabwacha. This is Mr. Happy Mufaya from Choma. Thank you, Mr. Happy, for that. I've got another message. Says, good morning, Zach. My concern, e.g., police vehicles and many more. But again, people underground are complaining that the same money, they are complaining about the same CDF money. My question, PS, did you know that people are complaining? If you know, what measures did you put in place to help people acquire that money? I think complaint is should have been that the people are complaining that they can't access CDF money. And if you've received such complaints, what have you done about it? So another one says, good morning, 5FM. My question to the PS is, why has Lusaka district which the Lusaka City Council presides over, have not up to now produced a WDC schedule of elections. Community members who want to stand don't know the clear roadmap. Hence, we have seen other councils and townships, their dates of elections have been produced and are clear. This is John Mwamba, Mwaba, here from Misisi community. Okay. Mwaba.
Okay.
Mwaba. I like the fact that he has those interests in as far as participating at WDC level. Now, let me look at Facebook. All right. I've got a message here from Brian. Let me see. Let me start with Milimo Mufambi. Milimo Mufambi says the whole Lusaka CBD is very dirty and smelling. What happened to the painting of all structures in Lusaka CBD rather? Okay, so let's go to another one, Pansy Kings. So Pansy says, great speaker, Mr. PS, and what about Forest 24 issue? When are you going to demolish the structures in that forest? Brian Mutembo Kapufi says, Bazak, I'm tired of this CDF rhetoric by this government, which to me remains on paper and not visible on the ground. Where I stay in George Compound, under Matero constituency, I have not seen one project worth the money they are claiming to have been increased, because compared to the 1.6 million, we saw boreholes, drainages, and outpost clinics. And under this much talked about UPND-CDF, we have not seen even a pit latrine, which is why we call it a hoax meant to deceive. We'll look at the other messages a little later. Would you like to respond to this?
Yes.
Maybe
yes.
be brief so that I can now go to the phone calls again.
So let me start with John Mwaba.
Right.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mwaba, for bringing to our attention the issue of the WDC elections that Lusaka has not published. I take it that it's my responsibility. You are asking me that as your officer responsible, please check with Lusaka City Council. So I'll do just that, because we guided local authorities up to when these elections should be done. So surely people should know, so that people like you who have interest can really participate. So I'll follow it up, and I'll let Zach know, and then he will find a way of getting to you.
Right.
But I'll definitely follow it up. Did I know that people are complaining about CDF? Yes, we do. There are a lot of complaints from different sections for different issues.
Right.
But one of the things we have also found is that even at community level, sometimes information is not really much on CDF. In some cases. In some cases, it's just a matter of you have, for example, 200 cooperatives wanting to access grants, and then these grants can only go to maybe 50 cooperatives. So obviously the 150 that remains behind are going to complain.
Yeah.
So that's really inevitable. But the bottom line is that we are aware of people's concerns. And remember, when we started the program, I was saying there's been a lot of feedback, and we're using these concerns to refine. One of the issues also was the complaint that even the representation of WDCs was not capturing all the community interest groups, and that's why we had information gaps. There are proposals, and I'm sure they will be adopted, that we expand the composition of the WDC so the different sectors are represented: the youth, the women, the disabled, and so on and so forth. So that is being done. Overlapping boundaries. I think this is a very important topic. Overlapping of boundaries between the traditional maps,
yes,
the traditional boundaries, and the planning authority boundaries, or the local authority boundaries. Now, the genesis of this issue is that most of the, okay, let me not say most, some of the areas in this country, okay, let me put it this way to make it clear. 90% of the land in this country or thereabout sits on traditional land.
Yeah.
Okay. What that means is that when we were creating local authorities, the traditional authority had to give us land in order to create a local authority.
Right.
So we got that land, surveyed it, demarcated it, gazetted it, and then it became entirely the land of the local authority. And Massa is not the only one. In Eastern Province, for example, we've got 7 local authorities that are sitting exclusively on traditional land. You are talking about Sinda, you are talking about Vubu, you are talking about several others. The biggest mistake which was made, that some of the declaration of the districts were done without consulting
the traditional
leaders. So we just woke up one minute and then say, oh, okay, here there will be a district, and the district was declared, and people started to move in infrastructure there. But the way the law sits, for you to get the gazette of the land where you want to put your infrastructure, you need the signature of the chief. So we have places where the chiefs have said, okay, you declared without us. Let's see how you proceed. We are not going to sign. So we are stuck. But anyway, that's a story for another day. We're engaging.
Right.
The point is that I'm aware about the Massa situation. And I wouldn't really want to talk much on radio, but suffice to mention that the traditional leaders, their Royal Highnesses, have been extremely cooperative, because the law, the Regional Urban Planning Act of 2015, also provides for what is known as joint planning agreements. What are those? Those agreements allow a local authority to plan for an area together with the traditional leadership. So there should be absolutely no conflict. But where there are conflicts, we are aware and we are engaging. What I can confirm to the nation through you is that the engagement so far have been extremely progressive, and we are making progress in terms of harmonizing the boundary issues between the local authorities as well as their Royal Highnesses, especially leveraging on the joint planning agreements.
Right.
CBD is very dirty. I can't agree more. The issue of the painting, what has happened, the issue of the painting. So the issue of the painting there was a directive by the minister that people should consider painting. However, we had some gaps in the legislation to compel people to do that. We have since undertaken some administrative measures, including passing of bylaws through the council, that will compel that we take that direction. But I can assure you that there's no relenting on this issue. We must and we need and we have to bring sanity to the CBD, whatever it takes. We just have to. Otherwise, then a fight against cholera is in futility. You are going to sanitize these areas, you plan in Kanyama, do all these kind of things, upgrade the slums there, then come to the CBD, there's no order, and Pagulisa sausage, Pakati Pakaro Road, the next Parika toilet, it will be the same thing. So we have to be comprehensive in terms of addressing these issues. So those issues will be addressed also. Is there anything I left out?
We can take some more calls now. On 0955221515 is the number you're calling us on. Good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Morning to you. How are you? Your name, sir, and where are you calling us from?
I'm Sedi Gajabe, calling you from Mazabuka district, Magoye area, Siowi, near Kalama.
Gajabe, welcome to the program. Please go ahead and have your say.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to listen to a PSC that is very eloquent in his deliberations. He has explained the topic and the ongoing so well. But my question now is, he is not a misplaced manpower. Correctly and politically, he was appointed to that position
the appointer, knowing too well that he was an able man. Now, my question is, how come with that expertise that is shown to us through his explanation, how come he has not implemented measures that can curb cholera, especially that he said that it falls mechanically and directly under his control? He has decided to wait for a presidential directive. This is when now he's coming out clearly to say this will be #1 program because the president has actually issued a directive. Is it not equally embarrassing? As he said, it is embarrassing for us to have cholera in a country where all the successive governments have had cholera. Up to now, it's embarrassing. Now, is it not equally embarrassing that having such a man with this expertise and eloquence in his deliberations, he is waiting for the president to issue a directive that he now is going to make this program #1. So that is on his part.
Right.
Coming to CDF, I want to believe and understand that I think the programmers of CDF in the guidelines, they were so serious that they kept the corruption. In the sense that all the districts, should I say the whole country, it is a common arrangement that every district, people or every constituency, people are complaining about this CDF, which by figures has gone up. But by implementation and what is going on, it's very questionable. They are saying we have bought a grader, like here where I am, in Magoye, Galama area. The roads are so bad. Why can't even fuel before this World Bank, which has been stationed in Magoye there to do these roads, before that time and after doing 5 kilometers, they are seated, they are waiting to see how their gravel will actually work. Why can't they even put fuel on that or in that grader to grade some of these roads here, which Kaunda left? After Unda, there has never been a grader here. Why can't we benefit directly from this CDF instead of saying no cooperative? How? Why? It means they put the measures that actually those people with sticky fingers in these offices that are manning CDF should not touch. So they are still confused as to how they can go around Mary to actually swindle. And because they can't swindle, they can't equally implement. From me, said Digajabe here in Kalama Magoye, I look at it that way. Please, Honorable Minister, PSC, with your expertise, shed more light on CDF. It's not as we see it. There is more to it than what meets the eye. Naunka Gumagoye.
All right, we'll take another call on 0955-221515. Good morning. Welcome to the burning issue. Please give us your name and where you're calling us from.
Oh, nalanda from Chibemba.
Mkwai, Atibani?
Nineo Mwamba, ndetu mina Murusaka mno mwine.
Mwamba Murusaka.
Mkwai.
Konka nyani pomkwai.
Mwa chibuke niba PS.
Wa Mwamba wesu walishani Mkwai.
Aho tukifyo mpende kwena.
Laka.
Bati ukulanda kwena, mulelanda fewino. Nomba, inecho ningafa ukumiyewa kofi. Testi lulo areas, nani, down mwino. Mule wala kwesi tamo mwamona wino, ito ile bomba CDF. Because ifoko tuambiro kumpa CDF, mu 2021 parapene UPND ife mpao. 2022 turempo wake CDF, 2023 turempo wake CDF, 2024 turempo wake CDF. But ukulingana loko tuikala, ifota tuwa monapo CDF for ibomba. Mu John Lengi omo ama toilet yonse ya shiri CDF oyo twale bombi yonse kane bayisala amenshi tamwaba muti but CDF tovati wakanyama CDF kudi so much but tatwamona kuna nguchiyo vadishile vaimba chidrainage ukufuma pyoko kuyafika kulasti kuja vacha vapimba ula pivatowaula namabridge yave aya mumashop chidrainage chifo chacho arape ufinopo vaya tapava nekuchitika ifimetisula pemuda munefwira navantu nomba nchi CDF ile bombe nchi napera mkwai.
We'll take one more call on 0955221515. That's the number you're calling us on if you'd like to be a part of this conversation here on the Burning Issue Thursday edition. Our guest is Mr. Nicolas Phiri, who is the Permanent Secretary for Technical Services in the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development. The number again is 0955221515. Let me squeeze in a message from Chingola Chwempala. It says, good morning. I agree. CDF kuchingola na tuimona ile bomba. I am Di Maria Salati from Chwempala in Chingola. Now I've got a message here from Turkey. By JOJ. JOJ says, morning, Zach, and morning, Mr. Phiri. I have some questions, sir. Your government said it's giving about 30 million plus for CDF. But I remember hearing some opposition saying they only received about 6 million for 2022 and 2023. How can you clarify that? The other is about cholera, sir. Your ministry is not helping Zambians. I mean, let's look at the poor water system in Kanyama, Matera, and Chawama. You people need to be serious. Let's look at Soweto. Please, Soweto is the major vegetable center, but let's look at the environment in terms of hygiene. What are your personnel doing? Even the poor drainage system in the CBD, Awashua, you guys need to wake up. Watching from Turkey. Thank you very much, JOJ. Let me give you another one from Lawson Lavison Limao. So Limao says, Vazak, I think there is a problem with education and sensitization in other constituencies and wards. What is the ministry doing in capacitating these areas? I was in Sanzala constituency. The people don't even know about CDF. That's my constituency, by the way, Sanzala.
Okay.
So maybe let's respond to those.
Okay, some of them are interrelated.
Yeah, indeed.
So,
yeah.
Let me start with Mr. Kachave.
Yes.
Is it not embarrassing?
From Magoye,
yes. It's not embarrassing that we had to wait for the directive. Well, it depends on how it is looked at, because Mr. Kachave, when I started this discussion, I said I want to discuss it in a very realistic way.
Right.
I'm a technocrat. The movement of people, I don't want to say displacement, but movement of people, resettlement of people is bigger than a technical decision. It's a political decision. And this is why, in fact, if I was going to paraphrase the question, Mr. Kacha, I was going to say, is it not embarrassing that we are only realizing now that we allowed people to settle in an area that they should have settled in the first place? So it's a political decision, Omunene. Mabodaya. These are politics. It needs to be bought at the highest level. And this is what has lacked in the past. Who is a PS to just say, no, now we are going to move people from Kanyama and take them to Kanakantapa, for example? Who is a PS in the scheme of things? So, no, it is not embarrassing. For me, actually, it's very satisfying because the man in State House makes decision not on the basis of politics. He makes decision on the basis of what is good for the country. So I'm not embarrassed at all. I'm very, very proud that I'm serving under a president who is doing what every other president has failed to do. So no, I'm not embarrassed. The second question was why not put fewer? Okay, now, so this question I'll combine it together with Mwamba
Yes.
from
within Lusaka.
Yeah, because basically
he-
they are all saying they can't see the impact of CDF.
Yes.
Now, Mwamba wesu ndemi papata nami sengera omunene baganchabe ndamugomba. This is where you and I must work together. Remember that I'm supervising 116 local authorities, 1,800 wards, 156 constituencies or 58 constituencies. It's not an easy task. I may not know the nitty-gritties of everything happening there. And that's why we are saying power to the people. My plea, kulomba wangu, ukumisengera kwandi Mwamba, is that when you see things like those, highlight them. Go to the local authority, ask what is going on here. What is your CDF program? I want to repeat, the CDF program, the council budget, is not a classified document. In fact, we have directed all the councils to publish those budgets on the billboards and on their websites. We have facilitated for all the local authorities to have functional websites that will be updated weekly. Go there and demand accountability. It is your responsibility as a citizen. After all, Mwamba wesu, the money we are using, government is using as CDF money. It's your money. We get it from you to provide the service. So ultimately, it's your money. I'm appealing, and through Mwamba na Wakanchaba, I'm appealing to all the citizens that where you see, remember, when I was talking about the challenges, I said some of the challenges may be political. Mwamba drainage, Vaisia Panjira, like we've heard now, the people are dying in there. What is that? What picture is that going to give for the government and to CDF? So these are issues, colleagues, that we must work together. Government has demonstrated goodwill by releasing the money. Here in Chingola, somebody says, we have seen CDF work here. So in some places it has worked. In some places it is having challenges. Where it is having challenges, let us interrogate together where the challenge is. Sometimes there are people that just think things cannot move without them. There are people that think that they are more important than the collective. You cannot be important. One individual cannot be more important than the collective. But we, as a people that benefit from the CDF, must resolve and realize that is in Ramazatu. When people are not grading your roads, so why are you paying the tax? Because you are paying the tax so that you can have government provide a service to you. So my plea, colleagues, is that instead of name calling and blaming, let's work together to find how this facility can work. Again, I repeat, decentralization through devolution cannot work without the active participation of citizens. Of course, we as a ministry also have a role. We need to create an environment where citizens are able to participate, and when they air their views are taken on board. We'll do that. But the plea really is that let us work together. I go to JOJ from Turkey. Again, JOJ, I must say that there's a lot of political rhetoric around CDF. I want to tell you that it is not true. And I want any one person to challenge me with figures that from the time we introduced the expanded CDF, we have not disbursed 100%. As of the budget for CDF last year was slightly above 4.1 billion, they're about maybe 4.1, 4.2 billion. As of November or October, thereabout, we had disbursed 75% of that money, about 3.6 billion or thereabout had already been disbursed. As I'm talking to you now, all the arrears for 2023 are sorted out. Look, if it is true, JOJ, that we have not disbursed the money, why are we discussing low utilization? Because low utilization means that the money is sitting in the account, it is not being used. So if the money is sitting in the account, where is that money coming from? And by the way, government cannot continue disbursing money to an entity which is not utilizing. Otherwise, we'll end up to go and borrow our own money from commercial banks. So it is not true that there was no disbursement. The disbursement have been made to local authorities. And even now, any local authority which has a project approved, being implemented, and there's no funding, it's just a matter of writing that here we need this much, and the money will be made available within 72 hours. And therefore, so this is the true position of the issues.
Let me take the last batch of calls, and then we begin to conclude. We lost it. Please call us back. We're taking the last three calls on 0955-221515. Good morning. Welcome to the program.
Morning. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Please share your name and where you're calling us from.
Peter Lawrence is my name. I'm calling from Utawama.
Did you say Lawrence? No?
Lawrence, yes.
Yes, Lawrence. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, Lawrence, Mulibanje kuchawama lero.
And I Utawama kuri bwino.
Ziko.
Choyamba lekaninga mbechitobika kwa sola to 100.
Palibevuto mkwaso.
Choyamba lekaninga kuyamikireni pobwera ku radio station for information yamene musharinga. Koma tamene niza kamba ko chiti chimozi, nkhani ya CDF nkhani ya bwino yamene ngabwerese chitukuko. Koma yamene nkhani ya CDF yatibweresera msokonezo wa ndale zachuluka. Pamene ndale zachuluka yakuti wanthu ambiri siwachita participate. So nizapempha wa PS muike ma programs kuti wazinda ma communities mwathu wazita sensitize wanthu.
Okay.
Because one mwamene tisangira wa WDC most of the times wanthu amene waziva ni wanthu wazandale. So kambiri mukachukutsa wanthu wazandale mchimozi mwatenga mwena zeka mwazika mliva kuti nsomba kuti bechani I think msokonezo makula. So chukwa chaichi I think you need to be impressive so that each and every citizen azita participate. Once chiko secondary mona monga kuti chituko kizambo onekera. Niziwa kuti ni program yako ina kuti amboteka kombali kuno kuni monga mwena afunikira kutengera mbali. Niziwa CDF ngankare game check. At the same time futi ngankani ya process ya ngani ya amena kamba ati procurement stage nayo tuone process imatarimba. So na hiyo mbali futi mulanganepo. So ni temba sogoleri ngani please muziranganepo so that at least we appreciate ngani ya CDF. Ekani nyekele pamene apa zikoma kwa mimi.
Zikoma. Pete. We'll take another one on 0955-221515 for those that would like to come through. We are taking the last two calls and we will be calling it a day. Now, PS, as we are waiting for the last two calls, I still have a question quickly. How CDF, I think this is on my agenda, how CDF is an alternative in order to mitigate the drought caused by climate change, because these droughts, now there is talk around let's irrigate and going forward we must irrigate in as far as farming is concerned. How is CDF capable to mitigate that?
Do you want to respond?
Maybe let me take another call. Good morning.
Good morning, Zach. Good morning, comrade. How are you?
Good morning.
Fine, thank you, sir. Your name, sir, and where are you calling us from?
I'm also fine, thank you. Nasatana Nadabo. This is Don German, the first calling within Chingola.
From Chingola. Your name again?
Don German, the first.
Don Chairman.
Sure.
Please go ahead.
Comrade, murendo rabuno sana pale ya CDF. Nomba kukulira trade zo kwa vunga. Ni state level diverting pia shimosha CDF mwatwala kuvunga paka tuvunga wachipa. Wena Zambia tamba kuta benefit mu CDF. I rest my case. I thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll take one more call on 0955-221515. Good morning. Hello, good morning.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Mr. Raj.
How are you today?
Very fine, and how are you, sir?
I'm very fine. I'm happy you are fine. Your name, sir, and where are you calling us from?
Yes, this is Yongo Jilogota. I'm Tonga in tribe.
Yes, Jongo.
Yes, sir. Here in Shibuyunji, Mwembeshi constituency under Mr. Jamba Majira.
Warumba.
Yes. Come to the topic now.
Yes.
But yes, Mwabuga.
Ndabuga mnene Mwabuga.
Ndakoma na baniku tijitonga mulawa.
Ndagambira gasolo.
Koreka unatata tuvandi nomurembegwa. Musangu na mudala ungwanda tinanda wa CDF yandipa utuzuzebuzwa musangu na gutuma gukindira y'enkulumende ya UPND abwendere babahaga inde higirema. Reason is simple. 1.6 million nigitwa rupe kwa PF yarujiwo yabuyo kugita one thing in the what in the constituency, one project only. But here now in Shibuindi, right up now, 2022 CDF, 4 words, but yes, but that 4 words, you also evaluate the project, give us a Salavan 2. That is the way to go. That is first point. Number 2, atuweze grant. Our grant, abamari asamba tulie omunene, ono bulibuyamba. From the Burindi Monovendrei, I think Antonio Abakanto, which Atabi Mari Asamba Turie, Ere Ave Mari Asamba Turie, Amana Mubat Tove, go to Muse, go Uri Mugatimuya, Mantuba Give, Mutamba Turie. Now, Ubanku, Amwasam community, now, Ubampongo, community that you can get from you and you and Buribo Musumpuga. Number 3, Mari Amastu. Whenever you go to Mudala Vauka, we are skewed. The only problem we are about you we are 6 months, 3 months, it's training, and the planning, whatever. Babulaja Wujita, Amutumbere about production. I want to have an above you. By you going, about Vajana Wujita. Otherwise, or you must dear for my dear, Urisumugire, Wamana Manana, Chitabo Bauga idea, or no Kubra Yor, Ribauga idea, Vajita politics become Umamani no. Bayaguru Zamba or Palumba.
Very important issues raised.
Yeah.
I need to take my last call. This is the last call we are taking. Good morning, your name and where you're calling us from.
Good morning, Honorable. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Your name, sir, and where are you calling us from?
This is Vom Sanje calling you from Kembe, Central Zambia.
Vom Sanje.
Mwa Bugidebuti.
Bubo omunene mabuga butinyevo.
Twabuga omunene. Vom Sanje belongs to 2 constituencies. When I'm here at the farm in Kembe, I'm here as a resident. When I'm in Lusaka, I'm a Kanyama resident.
Right.
Kanyama constituency.
Great.
Coming to the restructuring of Kanyama, it's a very, very much welcome development, Honorable. But yes, if you can find an investor, whether it becomes the upstairs, it's a Panyamarai Nianango Ankara upstairs, it is a Panimba Panga, Chikuruma Road, Aliko, Chikuruman Ziabuino Aliko. That is the way to go. If there will be any need of having an area where we can go, because we can't sacrifice always. Ikabora cholera, ndala mazamete zofunika tukuremi nkwala. So it's a benefit to the whole country. Tamba kutaya kuli cholera. As they say, prevention is better than cure. Ndio wamenejifunika kunkalira. Noti kuti tamanga muvimbotera tamanga, tieni tikutandizeni government ya bwera tikutandizeni the way tunaona kukamwala south kuli bantu bopunzira. Government ya pazamaro tieni tikupelekeni kwa mene muzankala bwino ati sifuna pamene pana. Why muliranga timfuna pamene hapo? Why mudandaula kuti government ibwere ili kutitireni chani? Government ya pesa njira yapo na kuti mavuto siyafuna kuti inkale perennial ceremony kuomboka ceremony every time, every year. Ubwera kuishia CDF. I think CDF wamene wafuna kuita politicize amalume ni kufuna kwao. Because it's also tiziba kuti kuli obviously yaba councillor, kuli ba councillor. If you want to know more about CDF, yendani kwa obviously kuli ba councillor. Ndiyo kwa mene muzapeza ba DWDC ba mene baja, baza kujitana advice. It's very folly and unfortunately kutulipa nyumba utenda ulaocha soro kuti CDF siniona, nima emberera jabe ba pepa, nima ona jabe bantu batenga. Yes, unga imbere,
angungaione vantu vatenga chifukwa you are not interested. Kuti tutamesi interested, why crying again? Monga kuno kwakanyama belong to Kanyama, as I have said. Apa pakanyama Pajonenge school. Siona vanachita approve 1x3 classroom. Bamanga na office yanyoani. Bamanga na kitchen na dining yaba na for the school program yata kuja chavana chanyoani. Mukaenda muliba chero, honorable chero. Mulikamini stadium mukamene under CDF. Bamanga secondary amene kwashuka secondary school. Upgraded. Ma drainage ututuma cross points all over. They are there. Ma 1x3 classrooms. Makamaka monga kukembe amarume angati uchoka mu rural area. Then ubolo kambe kuti CDF stiona ziseveza. I don't know how these guys they are going to campaign muno murusaka mamene bankara kuti balinkezi. Then they try to bash CDF. Sinizi wakuti bazakaenda campaign na vitali. Because it is really helping them. Vana vasikuru kunali kuita kuti ikagwamvura tinokwanisa kuenda kumasikuru. But my crossing points are all over. 1x3 classrooms are all over. In Muadi mo ngapena 3.
Ziko mabao Musanje.
That is the way to go. My PSC continue doing the good things because if I win a marume at the Viro Mera Mwine Muchere, Sivo Sonta Nakusonta, Usito Choka Pepa,
Ziko
Beka, Bazabi Pesa background. Ziko Mungo said.
Yeah, Ziko. Right.
Sure.
So let's begin to conclude, including my question. Right.
Okay, so first is to really thank Rollins of Chawama,
right,
for his suggestion that we consider community sensitizations.
Right.
I think I take this and we will factor it in our interventions and strategies to raise awareness. And I think it's captured already in our communication strategy that we are about to launch.
Right.
But also to appreciate him for his observation on the procurement processes for CDF. They tend to be slow. It's true. And that's the reason why, Rollins, for your comfort, we are making sure that in the years before, Sembe Apamanje Ndepena Vanhwashta apply my CDF. Last year, we started in October, and by December, the approvals had started. But this time, I think we have 90% approved. So that gives us a little bit of time for procurement processes. Next year, it will be even faster because we are starting the adverts before the end of this quarter. So by March, you'll see the adverts for CDF 2025 starting to run. But obviously, for it to be effective, we need to engage in community sensitizations, right, away from the other political structure. So I thought this was very, very good.
Right.
Don, Chairman, I think it's about the cost of mini-meal and why we cannot use CDF to leverage on that.
Yeah.
I want to say, Don, that yes, there's a recognition and appreciation of the cost of mini-meal. And I'm sure that your government will not just sit idle and let it go out of hand. And this is the reason why you see there is, the intervention of ZNS to mill the mini-meal and to begin to kind of bring the price down. And many more other interventions I'm very sure will be undertaken. I wouldn't really say about the CDF, but I'm speaking to this topic generally, but I know there are more competent people that can speak to this particular subject. CDF as alternative to climate change, maybe I'll address that last. Chongo, Vajongo, he says people graduate and then they have no employment. It's true. We have noticed that, especially in areas where you have 200 people going to train as drivers. So I think there's been poor identification of the skills gap in the particular areas.
And opportunities about it.
Because the whole essence really is that when people graduate from these skills development courses, they should be asking, for example, for tools. Okay, ni tools out niambe makanika, or niambe carpentry, or niambe saloon. That's the whole idea. Then they can create employment for other people. It's not really for them to graduate and go and look for employment. But obviously, if you graduate 200 drivers, for example, in Mumba Central, to work as taxi driver, where, how? I mean, if these are machine operators, how many machines are there in Mumba? So we are looking at how to help local authorities to do an appropriate skills deficit identification in the particular area. So, but thank you very much for that observation. Musanje welcomes relocation. I'm so grateful, Musanje, because remember, Zach, I told you that the people in Kanyama are actually willing
relocate.
They have always been willing. What has lacked are the incentives. And so what Musanje is just confirming that willingness, from the people. And I like his closing remarks that for those that want to politicize the CDF, they actually may end up being victims because the people are seeing, where it is working, where it has worked, and it's going to work everywhere. The people are seeing the benefits of CDF. And the benefits of CDF are to promote, for example, we are saying maternity annexes, we are saying desks, provision of desks, provision of water and sanitation. So when you are frustrating CDF, you are actually frustrating the people from accessing those services. And the people, when we say the people, we are talking about voters. When we talk about voters, we are talking about our bosses. So ultimately, you may be frustrating your own boss. And we all know what it means when you frustrate your own boss. The rest, I think people can conclude. Now, the last issue, Zach, you raised a very fundamental issue. I wish that we could have discussed it at the beginning of the program.
Right.
How can we leverage on CDF to address increased productivity, agricultural productivity, and food security
amidst droughts?
Well, I don't want to discuss it amidst drought. I just want to discuss it generally.
Right.
Now, Zach, the CDF, 65% of the CDF funding is consumed by the education sector and the health sector at 50 and 15% respectively. So the health sector accounts for 15% of the CDF funding. The education sector accounts for 50%. The agriculture sector accounts for 1%, Zach, 1% of the CDF. The livestock sector accounts for 1% of this. So the livestock sector, I'm separating the livestock and the agriculture because these two portfolios are separated. So the two sectors, the livestock and the agriculture sector, collectively they account for 2% of the CDF. Now, if I further break down the 1% agriculture of the CDF, what do we fund under here? Here we fund seed, fertilizer, herbicides, and pesticides. Okay? Now, when you look at all these seed, fertilizer, and whatever,
right,
when you put them in the climate like the way we are living now, they are all expenditure that cannot guarantee production. So the idea now is that we need to be looking at how we can restructure the CDF to finance continued production and productivity within the agriculture sector. So the first thing, obviously, is to stimulate the increase of the CDF allocation from 1% of what it is now in terms of consumption to at least something around 10%. And then within that, push more on the issue of irrigation. Zach, in this country, there are areas where farmers can produce throughout the year. Because you have seen, why on a fresh maize, this fresh maize is produced by people that have access to water throughout the year. We can do boreholes, equip them with solar-driven irrigation facilities. They range from treadle pumps, surface water, to underground water. They range from 30,000 to about 300,000. All these are products that we can deliberately allocate under CDF and then encourage our farmers to produce throughout the year. In the northern block of this country, we have floods. What does that mean? It means that we have availability of surface water. In the southern half includes Western Province, part of Eastern Province, the Central Province, Lusaka Province, and the Southern Province itself. You have, droughts. almost, lack of water, but you still have areas where you can get underground water. So yes, the CDF presents a huge platform to contribute in a small way, but significant way, to continued food production. And so what the ministry is doing now is to engage with players in the CDF value chain in order to see how we can restructure this CDF. I'm very sure that within the context of what is obtained now, today we know that at 14 hours, the head of state is going to be addressing the nation. We saw that statement that is going to be addressing the nation in terms of the El Nino effects. I'm very sure that once that address happens, then we are going to see the strategic direction. We are going to get the political leadership from the head of state on how how he wants the country to proceed. And CDF, as a ministry, we are very much ready to come on board and make CDF a platform that can begin to provide that incentive, because the money is already there. So we just need to restructure it and see how our farmers can be assisted with much needed irrigation for them to have production throughout the year for our food security and enhance agriculture productivity.
There's a late message that I would like to accommodate on Facebook. It's from Xavier Katongo, who says, good morning. And this question really brings me back to the last conversation we had, PS, here. So this one says, good morning, Mr. Phiri. Are you aware that councils in town have their own receipt books? If you don't know, contact me. I'm a victim of that. Even now, I have a fake receipt, and I can actually show you in the person involved. This brings me to the conversation we had, PS, the last time I hosted you, about whether you intend to innovate around collection of funds, to probably go it the electronic way and the e-way. And you assured me that this was in the pipeline and soon it will be implemented. I think that the reason we asked that question is because of people like Xavier, who's been a victim of manipulation and theft. So where are we with that?
Without putting anyone on the spot, and without laying a blame on any person, I just want to speak this generally. Because you see, sometimes when you try to be politically correct, you miss the point and you don't address the real issue. Let's agree that any loose system, any system which has loopholes, has a lot of beneficiaries. Let's agree that as a basis, as a foundation. So, and this brings me to another issue, that this country has never lacked good policies at any point. This country has ideas, policies, government documents, strategies, everything it has, including the brains and the manpower to implement. What has been lacking in this country is the implementation of those particular good ideas. So I go back again to the basic premise that I want us to agree that every system which has alias anafuna ploti tenga pa ploti, alias anafuna shari basi apa lipira, to anyone, that system, that disorder, that disorganization, that fraud has a lot of beneficiaries and interests behind. And it therefore follows that the process to sanitize it is extremely difficult. Extremely difficult. That I must confess and tell you to your face. Yes, I came here and I told you how we intend to roll out the electronic platforms as an alternative to replace the traditional way of doing things. Surely, who would resist a council collecting more revenue, doubling? Because our collection efficiency now is just around 50%. And that 50% is when we factor in the big six. You factor in Lusaka, factor in Kalumbila, factor in Livingston, all these kind of things. When you reduce those, you remove those, our collection efficiency of revenue on revenue is somewhere around 36-40%. So who would resist that? So logically speaking, you would say no one would resist, but it's been extremely difficult. So one of the things we are implementing is the change management. for players, because the ministry does not implement these decisions. The ministry sets a policy framework for local authorities to implement. Local authorities have their own structure. You have the, TC there, or principal officer, who reports to the councillors, who are almost like the board. The councillors are spearheaded by a council chairperson or a mayor, as it were, and so on and so forth. They cannot pass a thing until it goes through council and they approve and all this. So the intricacies are huge. Again, I come back to my rhythm. It requires all of us to participate, including the public. Like this person now who has said, it's a victim. Your money, you toilet for the use of the toilet and whatever. You're supposed to use a toilet where you find there's a disinfectant there. There's a tissue there. It's a toilet which will not give you this, what they call, what do you call it?
The UTIs,
STIs, all those things you contract for. It's supposed to be as clean as that. And guys, we have traveled. We have seen how our friends, using a toilet, there's someone ready there disinfecting it, cleaning it. That is how our public toilets are supposed to be. But because you go to toilet, council. I've moved in several of those and I've said this, I'm coming here, I don't want to see this. Chidram chamans was business per toilet, then you have to tap water in the drum to pour there. How expensive is a flashable toilet? The system is already there. All you need is to put the system there, flashable chain, connect mans. Council toilets every day leaking a toilet. How long does it take to fix a tap there? But people are using that toilet, they are paying every day. Where does the money go? So that issue requires all of us to demand accountability. All of us. The ministry sets the platform, sets the tone. The citizens also must demand. So yes, for you that got that fake receipt, I'm very much willing and interested in that issue because that is fraud. Government has prescribed receipts that are printed by the Ministry of Finance through the relevant institutions, accountable documents. Every public expenditure must go through that accountable document. So yes, I'm very interested in that issue. And there are areas where we have already taken action because of this same revenue issue. So the issue of electronic collection is still there, but I can tell you it is not moving at the rate that I would have loved it to move. There's a lot of resistance for people to change from that system which leaks revenue to a system which is watertight. This is not to say I'm pessimistic. This is not to say we have given up. This is to tell you the reality that we are dealing with, because people should know. But they have not yet implemented, not yet. There's a lot of resistance for people to discard their old ways because it benefited them a lot. You have seen even to remove these container along Didian Kimati Road, which people just put everywhere. The council was getting 300 kwacha maximum, 100 kwacha per month, the council. Landlord, muntu, private muntu, ezotenga 2,500 from a container because they got from the council, they are giving the council 100 kwacha, the landlord is has given a tenant and they are paying 1,500 or 3,500 at the expense of the council. When we moved in to move those people, you saw the resistance. Even the issue of, you are depriving us of livelihood came. This government is victimizing came. The real issue there is that there were big beneficiaries behind those clutter containers that meet the eye. So I'm explaining this for people to appreciate the challenges that we've had to deal with in order to sanitize the system. So the intentions are there. We are working with Smart Zambia. We are working with local authorities. Some local authorities have already migrated, but I can tell you others, there's a lot of resistance. Here in the CBD, parking, what you call it, where the vehicles park. Can you imagine how much money we can generate there if we automate the system? And the systems are there. But some of these things are very difficult to get through. And remember also, there's a legal part of things. Sometimes I want, as a controlling officer, as a supervising officer, I want things to go in a certain direction. But there's all these legal things that I have to navigate. in order for me to get what I want to get. And unfortunately, the way government works, I can't have it my own way. I still have to go through that mill. And some of the gatekeepers in that mill are interested in the beneficiaries. So those are the practical realities that we have to deal with in order for us to get what we want to get. But we'll get there ultimately.
PS, your concluding remarks.
Just to thank the people. You will never come to this program and go empty-handed. You always have innovative ideas coming through. You can see the enthusiasm and the willingness of people that we deliver to the people to the best of our abilities. My closing remarks is really to those people that are going to be in the phase 1 of the urban upgrading program that this ministry is coordinating on behalf of government and several other agencies. My appeal is that when our people come on the ground, please give them maximum support and cooperation. This is not a program that is meant to punish anyone. This is not a program that is meant to displace anyone, and no one is going to be displaced. This is a program that is meant for the good of the country, but also for your own good. Look at the trail of destruction that cholera has caused to this country. There was a year, actually, we had to close that, the market in after City Market, that is what they call that market. There's a market we closed there for some 2 or so weeks. When I say we, I mean as government. That time we were not in government, but I remember that market was closed. And why do I remember? Because I had 500 bags of groundnuts in that facility, some of the storage facility there. By the time we went back there to see what was happening, we found those groundnuts had germinated and they had deteriorated beyond market value. That is the cost of cholera in this country, and we cannot afford to have that. So government is determined to make sure that everyone who be affected in this is well looked after, but we cannot achieve this without the support and cooperation of the people of Kanyama, the political players, the church leaders, the clergy, everyone else. Let us agree that for once we make history by making cholera only available in our historical records and not on our annual events of activities in this country. I thank you most sincerely, Zach, and thank you to all our esteemed callers, those that join us through phone, Facebook, SMSs, and all the other platforms. We really appreciate your contributions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nicolas Phiri, Permanent Secretary, Technical Services at the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development. We are grateful to our partner radio stations that obviously carried this program live on their platforms. And thank you to you, all our listeners and those that participated, and even you who failed to come through. Definitely, we should be able to have you next time. Thank you so much. And to everyone, it's take care of yourselves and more so of each other. It's bye-bye for now.
Tune in next week for another edition of The Burning Issue and